Please be seated. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome members to this meeting of Council here in the Council chamber. Can I ask everyone present not to talk amongst themselves during the meeting, as this can be very distracting for others who are listening to the debate. Can I also ask everyone to ensure any mobile devices are switched to silent and do not cause a distraction during the meeting. I would like to remind members that where they are able to, they are required to stand when addressing the meeting. We are not expecting a fire alarm tonight, but if one should occur, please follow the officers out of the building to the assembly point on Manchester Road. Finally, let us all remember to treat members of the public, elected members and officers with respect throughout the meeting, as set out in the Code of Conduct for members. The meeting is being streamed, and I would like to welcome those watching on the Council's YouTube channel. Members, on behalf of the Council, I extend our condolences to the family and friends of John Kavanagh, a former borough and county councillor who passed away recently. Item 1 on the agenda, minutes of the meeting held on 24 January 2024. I will move those minutes. Councillor Anwar, will you second those minutes, please?
I second those minutes, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favour, please say aye. Those minutes are approved. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Yes, Councillor Ishmael.
Mr Mayor, I declare an interest as Chair
Councillor
of
Reynolds,
the Council for Voluntary Services for Burnley, Pendle and Rossendale, and as a relative of parish councillors. It's an other interest, not a pecuniary interest.
Sorry, Councillor, I just want to clarify whether it's prejudicial or non-prejudicial. You said it's another other interest, I presume it.
Okay, and rights. Okay, we move on. Sorry. Oh, Councillor Reynolds, yeah, please.
Item 5P, the appointment of Mayor and Deputy Mayor.
Right. Yeah, noted.
Sorry, Councillor Reynolds, is that a disclosable pecuniary interest?
Yeah. Okay, item 3 on the agenda, Mayor's communications. Yeah. Okay, oh yeah. The Mayor's committee are operating a pop-up shop in Charter Walk Shopping Centre on Thursday, Friday and Saturday of this week. The shop is operating on a cash-only basis and is stocked with a wide range of objects. So please support that charity shop. Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda, public question time. I think it's non-received.
None have been received, Mr. Mayor.
Item 5 on the agenda, items for decision by the Council. Before we start the debate on 2024-25 budget, there are 5 items of business to consider first. These are items 5A, 5B, 5C, 5D, and 5E. I will take these individually. We will then proceed to the budget for 2024-25. These are agenda items 5F and 5I and will be considered together en bloc. After the budget items have been considered, I will take the rest of the items on the agenda individually. I would like to remind members that a recorded vote is required to be taken on the budget and on any amendments made on it. Can I point out to members that items for decision by council are treated as motions? Once a proposal has been moved and seconded, members may speak once and for a maximum of 5 minutes. Member may then only speak again on an amendment. Please note that the relevant extracts from the minutes of the 15th February 2024 executive meeting have been published as a supplement, and the relevant recommendations for full council have been highlighted in bold in each minute. The council tax resolution at agenda item 5I has also been published in the supplement. Just going back to one item with probably some misunderstanding is regarding, these are agenda items 5F to FI.
L. Can you just read it again from?
Yeah, we will then proceed to the budget for 2024-25. These are agenda items 5F to 5L, yeah, and will be considered together en bloc here. I'm glad that they picked up. Yes, okay. Now we are moving toward the agenda item 5A, report of the independent remuneration panel on the members allowance scheme 2022 to 25. Members, is the recommendation of the IRP at paragraph 2 noted. Councillor Anwar, will you move? Yeah, just that item is just for the note here. So the independent remuneration panels, yeah, as in the first stage here. Councillor Anwar, will you move one of the recommendations set out at paragraph 3 of the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the recommendation by the IRP, which is to recommend an increase of 4.6% as set out in the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Townsend, will you second that?
I'll second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any member? All those in favor, please show. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Yeah, that carried, yeah. The item is carried. Right, we are moving toward agenda item 5B, strategic plan. Councillor Anwar, will you move the reports, the recommendations?
I move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you second that?
Second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Any member? All those in favor, please show. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? This item is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 5C, revenue budget, monitoring Q3 2022-23. Yeah, 2024-25, so it's been
23, 24.
also, yeah, 23-24. Sorry, it wasn't written. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please move the report's recommendations?
Move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, will you please second that?
I second the report, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor, please show. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Right, this item is carried. Thank you. Right, agenda item 5D, capital budget monitoring 2023-24. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please move the report?
Move the report, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Anwar, will you please second the report?
I second the report, Mr Mayor.
Any member? All those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Thank you. This item is carried. Agenda item 5E, 2023-24 Treasury Management Quarter 3, April to December. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please move the report?
Move the report, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Anwar, will you please second the report?
I second the report, Mr Mayor.
Any member? All those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Right, this item is carried. Okay. Right. Okay. Agenda item F2. Agenda item 5 F to 5L. The budget for 2024 to 25. As these items will be taken together, I shall use my discretion on the 5-minute rule and may allow members to speak for longer. That's a change. Once the report have been moved and seconded, I intend to invite the remaining group leaders to speak and, if relevant, make any amendments. For any amendment or motion debated as part of the budget, a recorded vote is required. The Chief Executive will give the roll call and the members should cast their vote for, against or abstention. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you move the reports and recommendations from the Executive?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I take pleasure in proposing the Council's budget for the municipal year 2024-25, which are the items 5F to 5L on our agenda papers, and I propose that they are taken en bloc. I begin by thanking our officers for their hard work and dedication and effectiveness. I also thank the previous administration and in particular Councillor Graham for their stewardship of our finances. As an administration, we are conscious that this past year has been very difficult for many of our residents. This budget aims to help support the most vulnerable people in our communities whilst continuing to tackle the priorities of the strategic plan. As a council, we continue to work in a difficult financial climate. Balancing the council's finances each year while still providing a quality service to our residents continues to be a challenge. The current rate of inflation is 4%, having reached just over 10% last year. The proposal for our council tax increase is 2.99%. This increase will raise the cost to a Band D household from £328 to £337 for this year, which will raise an additional income of 233,000 in 2024-25. This is an actual increase of under £10 per household for the year. That is 17 pence a week. Government proposals are for an increase of 5.4% in this council's core spending power. And I would point out to members that the average for councils in England is currently 7.5 across the country. I remind members that central government's calculation of how they give Burnley Council of how much they give to Burnley Council makes a number of assumptions. The most important assumption is that the council will increase our council tax by a certain level, which this year is 2.99%. This is to make up the shortfall in the funding that they give us so that we achieve the 5.4%. If we did not agree this increase in council tax, there would be an additional £233,000 to be found from reserves for this year and for all future years. That is well over £1 million shortfall over 5 years. As a council, Burnley has to accept the settlement from central government, but the view of many in this council chamber is that the total money available is insufficient to meet the reasonable expectations of our residents, and even worse for the people in Burnley who need help to meet their most basic needs for food, shelter and adequate standard of living. There are continuing delays to the government's fair funding review and their business rates review. It seems likely that these will not happen until 2026-27. We expect a further 1-year settlement from the government in 25-26, as there is going to be a general election at some time in this year. A 1-year settlement gives no security about future funding, and it discourages long-term planning. All these factors increase our frustration as a council responsible to our residents for planning for their future. This government and its predecessors have systematically starved local government of money. As a district council, we provide services which are valued by local people, including clean streets, emptying bins, and parks for recreation. Schemes like Town to Turf should, eventually, make this town look better. But as a council and as an executive, we want to be able to do so much more. Most importantly, we want the power to make our decisions about our priorities and about what our residents need, rather than being tied to the latest government cash pot for whatever they think might make them popular. Members will be aware that our council tax is a small part of the overall increase our residents will face. Lancashire County Council set their increase last Friday at 2.99%, with an additional 2% for adult social services. Lancashire Police Authority has an increase of 4.75%, and Lancashire Combined Fire Authority agreed a 2.99% increase. This budget aims to balance the council's finances over the next year with some limited growth and with a continued move towards becoming carbon neutral, increasing the pace of the council's actions to reduce carbon emissions. Members will see a more detailed plan for that process in the near future. As a new executive, a partnership of different parties, it is our intention to continue to work to improve our town, and I look forward to sharing those plans in the coming months. The budget includes growth of £399,000 with 134,000 continuing commitments and 266,000 for one-off items using reserves. The new administration has been able to find that money for a number of growth items, as well as paying increased costs. An example for you all is the cost of audit fees, which we are obliged to pay, which have increased by 150% this year. Growth items include funding for Downtown and Burnley Together, which we fund jointly with Calico and Burnley Football Club in the community. We're proposing to provide that long-term funding over 3 years for Downtown and Burnley Together. Both are ways of giving a hand up, not a hand out when people need it. Since the opening of Downtown last May, there has been a downward trend in the number of emergency food parcels requested and in the total number of people being fed by the food bank. On average, 1,260 shopping visits take place each month at the community groceries. In each case, people pay £5 for each shop and save about £20 compared with supermarkets. That's over £25,000 saved each month. 710 pupils got pre-loved school uniforms last summer. 19 different agencies and charities provide services from Downtown, with 161 households getting supported guidance and advice. Burnley Together and Downtown provide a focal point for services, and they stimulate and manage partnership working across public, voluntary, private and faith sectors, working together for the benefit of Burnley people. The funding proposed will allow this work to continue and with partners, and will also allow time to make the case for support and funding from an even wider range of sources. In addition, there is increased funding for sewer baiting, targeted where it's most needed, and for an additional enforcement officer for private rented sector accommodation in particular. This post is specifically aimed at the issue of damp housing leading to respiratory illnesses. This will be a practical partnership working with health providers. We also propose that this year the council tax subsidy will be set at 95%, with the costs being met from reserves. This will enable a gradual return to 85% over some years, enabling continuing support for the residents who need it. Finally, there is funding for an antisocial behaviour officer to work with the police and others across the borough to coordinate the council's interventions. At this point, I will stop speaking and will move but reserve the right to speak. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Richmond. Councillor Anwar, will you please second the reports and recommendations from the executive?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second the report and recommendations and reserve the right to speak.
I shall now invite opposition group leaders or nominated members to speak one at a time. I shall then open the floor to any member. I will start with Councillor Mark Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The previous administrations had to make some really difficult decisions to put this council on a sound financial footing over the last 14 years of Tory austerity. It's our belief that there is now some headroom in the finances to do more for our residents without changing the net budget requirements. The growth items included in the executive proposals are welcome, but they don't go far enough to meet the needs of residents and the challenges facing the borough. There is no additional money identified for cleaner streets, for green spaces, and for issues facing our town centre. This will be a major disappointment for many residents who are seeing their top concerns ignored by this administration, and especially so when they see their council tax increasing by the maximum allowed, especially during a cost of living crisis. The Labour Group are therefore moving an amendment that will go some way to addressing these omissions in the budget proposals. The proposals the Labour Group will be putting forward are fully funded by a mixture of additional savings and the prudent use of reserves. And I'd now ask that the amendment is distributed as I talk my way through it. So the Labour budget amendments for 2024-25 will see additional resources for vital services, a welcoming town centre.
What do you?
Can we just?
Adjourn so members can get on with it, we can sort ourselves out. Members, will be okay when we come back in? Can we adjourn, adjourn for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Just so that we can sort ourselves out.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Right. Start over. Oh, yeah, yeah. Please, can someone move for the adjournment for 5 minutes? And the second, please. Okay, it's moved and seconded, so I'm going to adjourn this meeting for. All those in favor, please show you. Looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
stand to receive the worship of the Mayor of Burnley, Councillor Aaron Carr. Thank you.
Please be seated. So shall we start again from bottom somewhere? So, yeah, Mark, Councillor Townsend, yeah, if you please stand up and finish your speech.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and best wishes to Carol. I wasn't quite expecting that reaction as I
it was
started my
quite shocking,
amendments.
really.
There we
For us,
go.
yeah, but hope she's okay.
Okay, so the point where I'd got to was basically, in terms of spelling out this amendment, was that this will see additional resources for vital services, a welcoming town centre, and support for those in need. Firstly, £50,000 for green spaces, with a priority being the improved maintenance of grassed areas and grass verges in residential areas across the borough. Something that residents have been calling out for in many areas of Burnley, especially through last summer when there was extreme difficulties in mowing, certainly in some wards, and we got to grass knee-high in some areas. Secondly, £50,000 for street scene, with the priority being improving the cleanliness of the borough's streets, with a focus on littering and dog fouling. And I certainly think that that's a priority in all the wards across the town. Thirdly, a one-off £25,000 for the town centre business improvement districts towards their key theme of implementing projects and services that support a safer, more attractive visitor experience, including what could be wardens to support some of the antisocial behaviour we've seen. Again, issues that have been raised in this council chamber recently. Fourthly, a one-off £20,000 for street scene to provide targeted waste management services for households in financial need and requiring crisis support. Qualifying households to be referred by Street Scene, Housing, Burnley Together, Calico, as per similar schemes in 23-24 under the Household Support Fund. And I think certainly a number of members have been out with Street Scene officers in delivering some of those services over these last few weeks, including myself yesterday. And finally, a £1,000 for Treasury management purposes, just to cover for some loss of interest payments arising from how these proposals are going to be financed. So in total, that's £146,000 of growth items, of which £45,000 are one-off proposals. These will be paid for by a £24,000 increase in salary savings from vacant posts. The current executive proposals take no account of any increase in salary that has been over the last 12 months. So that is purely the increase in taking the salary bill from last year to the salary bill expected next year. That's a £24,000 increase. A £30,000 from a 2% reduction in utility usage. I don't think anybody can argue that we want to reduce our utility bills, and 2%, let's just say, is a really pragmatic and prudent approach to what we should be achieving anyway on a year-on-year basis, but it'll add some emphasis to that to make sure we achieve. Surely 5% should be more realistic in terms of getting consumption down. A £47,000 contribution to revenue from the £1.4 million annual contribution to the Business Rates Volatility Reserve. So this £1.4 million goes in there. We're using that resource basically to finance capital schemes at the moment, but it can be used for revenue purposes. There's no reason why it can't. And basically what I'm suggesting is we should use 3.4% of what we receive to finance these growth proposals. Then we've got a £37,500 contribution to revenue from the no longer required primary engineer reserve. Primary engineer was a scheme that we ran for 3 years, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, but the reserve has been left in place. There was some money left in it, so I'm suggesting we should now use that to fund these proposals. And finally, a £7,500 contribution to revenue from the cost of living reserve, because some of this is associated with cost of living, certainly around the waste management services and crisis support. So that then would fund £146,000. Mr. Mayor, these proposals are affordable, 37% funded by savings, with the remainder funded by reserves. And to put this into context, because we all know reserves can only be spent once, we will only be spending an additional 0.46% of the 19.5 million currently estimated to be in reserves at the end of this financial year. The Q3 report that we've just approved tonight shows there will be 19.5 million in at the end of this year. Bearing in mind that reserves over the last 6 years have increased by 287%, from 6.8 million in 2018 to 19.5 million at the end of this year, this plan is affordable, and it aligns with what residents tell us that they want to see improving. Mr. Mayor, I move this amendment that will help to deliver cleaner, greener neighbourhoods, a welcoming town centre, and additional support for those in need. Thank you.
So you move the amendment, yeah. Yeah, is there any seconder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second the amendment and reserve the right to speak.
Okay. Right, the section 151 officer has confirmed that is a viable amendment. So, yeah. Now, any member-
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can you read that out very clearly? I didn't
Oh,
quite
did I?
catch
Okay.
what the S151
Right, yeah.
officer had said.
Yeah. The section 151 officer has confirmed that is a viable amendment. So it's possible that we can debate on this one. Right, any member? Please, if anyone want to speak on this. Councillor Lishman? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank the councillor for the amendments that they've meant, but I think this stage we will not be recommending that we take them. In terms of all of them, I'm slightly perplexed, as I think other colleagues on the executive are, in that there's funding already going in as far as the grassed areas and verging is concerned, and there's work around rewilding rather than always permanently clipping down the grass. So there's quite a lot of work that's going on and will be continuing, and will certainly be addressed in the next 12 months. Regarding the proposal around targeted waste management services for households, that's already in place and is already being provided, and I'm certainly assured by officers that that will be continuing. In relation to the work around street scene and targeting, that is something that the executive has been discussing and certainly intends to move forward on, not necessarily funding it in this way. So really, as far as all of those that they're suggesting, I think we feel it's work that's already being done. We feel that we are tackling those areas and will increase doing so, and therefore we reject the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do accept some of what Councillor Lishman says. Yes, money is being spent on green spaces, money is being spent on grass verges and so on. What we're saying basically is it's not enough. Anybody who's been out and about in the borough, particularly in Padiham, I'm referring to grass verges in Padiham, we talk to local residents all the time and heard and seen that some of their biggest worries and problems and issues are about things like the lack of mowing in the summer. It's not so bad at this time of year. The grass is only just starting to grow. But you come to July and August, and it's really very unsightly, and it attracts litter and it makes the areas look unkempt. We also are hearing all the time from residents about fly tipping and dog poo. So what we're doing here is saying, yes, we do these things, we accept that we do these things, and sometimes we do certain aspects of our work on green spaces and street scene very well, but we're giving the officers further resources to improve and do more of the stuff that we do well, reflecting that this is what the people of the borough want. So, you know, I don't in any way diss what Councillor Ishman has put forward in her budget, but I do say that it lacks ambition and imagination and doesn't necessarily consider all of the people's priorities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McGovern.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got to say, I'm actually a little bit disappointed reading this Labour budget amendment, notwithstanding the fact that I have seen Labour basically tonight talking about issues that they had control over not too long ago, but yet did nothing over. And now all of a sudden we can find money here, money there. Whereas the amendment that's going to come from the Conservative group later tonight will focus on people's pockets. It seems that Councillor Townsend's proposals for these 50,000 here, 50,000 there, it's just been put together just on the back of a fag packet. I mean, the £50,000 for street scene, for the priority of improving the cleanliness of the borough, are we talking about more staff? Are we talking about new equipment? What are we talking about? Just giving £50,000 to the department and hoping that things are going to be cleaner? There's no real detail in it whatsoever. As for grass cutting, members will remember I raised grass cutting as an issue in Haptonworth Park last year and was told by the Labour group that there was plenty of grass cutting and it wasn't a priority. We needed carbon literacy training instead of grass cutters. So now to hear this, I just think it's perplexing. And then this thing, and I did pick it up from Councillor Graham when she says this, that it's just not enough. It's Labour's line for everything. It's never enough. It's never enough. There's always something more, always something more. No matter how many times, whether it's this administration coming with some good ideas, or whether it's the government coming with new ideas, or whether it's our group coming with good ideas, it's never enough. And I'm just sick of hearing that things are never enough. The question that I've got, which I hope that one of the Labour councillors answers in wrapping up what I see as a farcical amendment, is basically, does this increase council tax for residents by the maximum amount of 2.99%, or are we talking about a reduction in council tax? Because Councillor Townsend, when going through his amendment, spoke about, oh, you know, people can't afford this 299 and the cost of living crisis, it's not the right time. So does this amendment increase council tax for residents 2.99% or not? Because the way it's been put together, it just looks, there's nothing to it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harbour.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can just concentrate on the green spaces issue, and I think members who I worked with closely previously will accept that I was raising issues regarding the green spaces and the quality of maintenance around green spaces last year, and I said it was something we needed to look at. I haven't just thought of this on the back of a fag packet or thought about it willy-nilly. I think all colleagues will accept that at some stage they were complaining to green spaces saying that they can't get jobs done for various reasons. Now I know that our green spaces team do a wonderful job within the parks. Our parks are immaculate. What this amendment does is actually strengthen up in the urban core, in our inner areas, where I think we can improve green spaces maintenance. I'm not talking about abandoning the real wilding projects or anything like that. I'm just talking about what's in place now. And colleagues, as I say, across all parties, wherever you are in the ward, there was always a demand on green spaces for more maintenance. And the teams couldn't get round it fast enough. What this would do would strengthen the teams throughout the borough for 6 months a year. And I think that's quite a reasonable request. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Whittaker.
Is it on or not? Yeah, it is. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to echo what Councillor McGowan's actually said about this. I'm absolutely befuddled by this amendment. I've got to raise just what Councillor Harb just mentioned there about green spaces. You know, certainly the councillors in Whitfield and Arden Hill, we speak to green spaces. We've set out a work schedule with them. Our grass is cut. It's cut well. Our hedges are cut. That's because we've actually approached them. We don't leave it until it's overgrown. We've spoken to them and we've set a programme in place. I just want to go, the thing that's really got me about this is this 2% reduction in utility usage. This is a typical Labour. We've got a plan, but how are you going to implement that? How are you going to save 2% on your energy costs? Where are we pulling this out from? How are you going to do it? Are you going to put LED lights in? We don't know. You're just coming out with figures and facts. I'd just like to know what that is. As I say, I'm just amazed that this has come before us. It's just like it had just been wrote up an hour ago. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Councillor Townsend, you have a right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I'm disappointed in the reaction from across the chamber in terms of basically fully funded and costed proposals being basically put down in such a way for resident priorities. But just to come back to a couple of the points that were raised, and just the final one, I think, which is the most important, and it was why I asked you to repeat again, Mr. Mayor, what was said at the outset. The S151 officer has looked at all those proposals and basically said that they are completely viable and will produce a balanced budget. So these are affordable proposals, and far from being done on the back of a fag packet, I can assure him there's been about 2 weeks' work in terms of putting these together and going through all the reserves and making sure that the books balance at the end of the day. So every single one of those funding proposals, as well as the proposals themselves, going to green spaces and street scene, where the officers in those departments have schemes that are ready to go that will improve the services that are being offered to people around the borough. Now, if anybody in this chamber wants to say that the grass mowing regimes across the borough worked really well last year and we're prepared to live with that again, you go ahead. But I think we all have to look at ourselves and say, if there's some money available that we can go and put some better services in place, why would we not do it? Councillor Lishman was very quick to say that we're doing all this already, we've already got money. Well, how much? Last year it certainly wasn't enough. And if people, every day, any of us who go and knock on any doors will know that one of the biggest reactions you get is litter on streets, dog fouling, and what you're just saying is we're doing absolutely everything we can. We can't afford to throw another penny at it. We've put up the white flag. This is it. You have to live with it. If that's your message, fine. But what I suggest is that we can put some more resource into this and it can be fully funded. So I suggest that colleagues use your independence within the scope that you have and think about this clearly in terms of your own particular experience on doors, your own particular wards, and those experiences you get, and say, would the people, if I knocked on a door tomorrow and said there are going to be better littering, dog fouling, mowing regimes, if we signed up to an amendment, do you think you'd get a positive reaction to that? And I would suggest that you would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lishman, you have a right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've little to add. Obviously, Councillor Townsend is more aware of what goes in my thought processes than I do. I haven't explained in detail. No, I'm hopeful that you've all looked at the budget papers and have actually read them so that you don't need to be spoon-fed, because you have a responsibility as councillors setting a budget to know what you're doing. Don't accept the amendment, Mr. Mayor. I beg to move.
Thank you, Councillor. Right. We will now go to the recorded vote on the amendment. Lukman will read out the names and Alison inform the mayor of the outcome.
Thank you. I'm just going to read out the names individually. If you can state quite clearly for the benefit of officers whether or not you vote for, against, or you're abstaining. So to begin with, councillor, this is for against or abstaining on Councillor Townsend's amendment. Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, Councillor Lee Ashworth, Councillor Howard Baker, Councillor Gail Barton, Councillor Gordon Birtwistle, Councillor Helen Bridges, Councillor Charlie Briggs, Councillor Margaret Brindle, Councillor Joanne Broughton, Councillor Saeed Chowdhury, Councillor Scott Cunliffe, Councillor Sue Graham, Councillor Alex Hall, Councillor John Harbour, Councillor Bill Horrocks, Councillor Alan Hosker, Councillor Martin Hurt, Councillor Jacqueline Inkle, Councillor Mohammed Ishtiaq, Councillor Nusrat Kazmi, Councillor Anne Kelly, Councillor Arif Khan,
Against.
Councillor Jack Lorner, Councillor Alan Lewis, Councillor Gordon Lishman, Councillor Margaret Lishman, Councillor Sharish Lawn, Councillor Jamie McGowan, Councillor Neil Mottershead, Councillor Mark Payne, Councillor Asif Roger, Councillor Paul Reynolds, Councillor Christine Solis, Councillor Mark Townsend, and finally Councillor Don Whittaker. I think I've covered all members. I've not missed a member, have I?
No. Right. The amendment is false.
It's not carried.
It's not carried the other way. Yeah. Thank you. So we are moving towards. Yeah, we will now go back to the original. Sorry.
Okay, do you?
Yeah, original motion, and I shall invite Councillor Jamie McGowan to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the Conservative amendment and say a few words. I think it's coming round, is it? So it's that time of year again when we're setting the budget for the next financial year. And as expected, the council has put together a budget which proposes a 2.99% increase in council tax, the maximum allowed. Look, I don't want to stand here and question the motives of those involved in this process. Going through the yearly budget is a task that requires time and effort, because setting any budget which totals just shy of £19 million is bound to be complex. But is it really out of bounds for us to be able to set a budget which does not require every single year to increase the amount paid by residents by the maximum allowed? I don't think it is, and that's why I'm recommending an alternative budget. Last year, I proposed a complete freeze on council tax because the growth items Labour wanted to include were an insult to working people. I remember the brand new iPads they wanted to buy us councillors and the money they were spending on refilling water fountains. That's just two examples. But thankfully, that's all gone this year. The new administration seems to be focusing on some of the areas we all know is a problem for people. They've taken on board the comments about antisocial behaviour, with more resources being put in that area. They've come forward with a plan to deal with the rat problem ignored by Labour. And something which I'm happy about is that they've listened to those of us in Hapton and Padiham who've been raising 3G pitch provision and how it's needed for our local football teams. So whilst this budget is not perfect, it's a damn sight better than the one I saw last year. But as a group, we still feel that those who go out to work each day are still getting the short end of the stick with the maximum council tax increase, and is why we're proposing to reduce that. Set out in our amendment, given to all councillors, is a fully costed and financially viable way to help everyone within the borough, not just those out of work. Because so many residents in my area tell me, and I agree with them, that those in work are always back of the mind for this council. And to me, that can't be right. Our proposal will see everybody helped. Those who aren't in work will still get a whopping 85% discount on council tax, not the 95% discount being proposed, which incidentally was rejected in a public consultation. That saves £80,000 off the bat. Burnley Together, a charity run by Calico, will still receive £100,000 of funding from our cost of living reserve, not the £140,000 being proposed. That's another £40,000 saved. But crucially, it does something for those of us in work who, under our plan, will not have to endure another year of the highest possible council tax increase. A commitment to freeze council tax was possible last year. We had the money to do it, and the then Labour administration chose not to. But this year, we should be easing the burden for residents and helping in the areas already identified. But we should also be extending the support to those who work, and because of that, always seem to have to bear the brunt of council tax increases. I hope the majority of members can support this amendment tonight, and it's clearly in front of you on the sheet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Sorry. Right. This section, sorry. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Askar, seconder, yeah. The section 151 officer has confirmed that is a viable amendment. Thank you. Yeah. Any member, please, on the amendment? 5 minutes. Is there any seconder? Yeah. Councillor Baker, are you proposing?
Seconded. Is that seconded?
Are you proposing 5 minutes? Yeah, okay. And seconded by Councillor Conliffe. Yeah. All those in favor, please show. All those against? Any abstentions? Yeah. That's all.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Chair of Burnley, Councillor Aaron Carr. Thank you. Please be seated. Right. On the amendment proposed by Councillor McGowan, any member Councillor Barton, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel like I'm in an echo chamber, but to talk about council tax being reduced or frozen yet again, when the clear advice from the Local Government Association points out that up to 1 in 5 councils across the country are at risk of issuing a Section 114 notice because of the extreme financial pressures we find ourselves under. As Chair of Scrutiny, I am very relieved to be regularly monitoring the reports that show that things at Burnley are looking much more positive than they are in other parts of the country. I would hate for the Conservative amendment to put this council and its residents at risk of financial failure in the future.
Any other member? Councillor Gordon Lishman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was really struck by several things about this amendment. The first thing, which seems to me to be entirely consistent with the general Conservative Party approach, is that you take money off poor people and you call it efficiency saving. Now, efficiency saving is a phrase that gets used regularly by central government as a means of cutting the amount that they spend on the people who need it most. And that is exactly the proposal here. I would strongly recommend to the Conservative group that they follow a practice which I have always found beneficial in my life, which is to listen carefully to Councillor Margaret Lishman. And particularly in relation to Burnley Together, which is not calicos. The whole point of Burnley Together is that it brings together a range of different agencies which can combine in order most effectively to meet needs. And that initiative has produced the results which you heard in the earlier speech proposing the budget, and which deliver very significant cash benefits and cash savings to our local residents. If you take that money out, you're not taking that money out of the borough's budget. You're taking it out of the pockets of the Burnley residents who most need that money. As for the 2.99%, where did that figure come from? Who was it who decided that a 2.99% increase should be included in local authority budgets in order to be able for them to be able to maintain the level of expenditure which the government expects? That figure came from the government. That figure came because that was their assumption about what all local authorities would do in order to be able to spend the total amount which even our current government regards as the minimum which local authorities ought to be spending. I was also struck earlier by the comments on the Labour amendment. I really think the Conservative Party finds itself in some difficulty at the moment, particularly in contexts like this. as with comparable right-wing governments around the world, they are actually high-spending, statist, high debt, high expenditure bodies which are the opposite of traditional conservatism. And the problem which conservatives here and in other places face is the contradiction between that traditional conservatism, which actually had some care for the people who were worst off in society, and the conservatism which increasingly their party is representing, which is throwing central government money along with central government control all the time at all the other actors within our political and business systems. It seems to me they need to address those conflicts and those challenges. If they do that, of course, we can then find ourselves in the happy position we do in this chamber, where old parties can maintain the arguments of the last century, while allowing people of competence, compassion, and coherence to work together in order to meet the challenges that our country and our residents face. And I would therefore hope, with I think some confidence, that this chamber will reject the amendment which has just been proposed.
Councillor McGowan, you have a right to reply. Oh, sorry, Councillor. Yeah, no, it's Councillor McGowan first, and then I think, according to my sheet, yeah. Right, Councillor Townsend, then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Lishman put very eloquently, really, a lot of the contradictions that are around Conservative amendments around council tax. It really is a bit rich for Conservative councillors to turn up in here proposing low council tax, where last week I sat for a few hours, as some other colleagues did, obviously actually at County Hall, but I was sad enough to watch it online, most of it, in terms of what was going on at County Hall, where the Conservative county councillors, who, don't forget, are the vast majority of our council tax bill, couldn't wait to put council tax up by 4.99%. As Councillor Hosker, the group leader of the Conservatives, will full well know, as he takes the Conservative whip at County Hall. And the Police and Crime Commissioner, I challenged him on his budget at the Police and Crime panel about putting it up by 4.75% whilst ballooning his reserves, but he couldn't reduce it below 4.75%. And then we have councillors coming in here from Conservative background basically telling us, oh no, we always know best, we can cut waste, we can do this, that and the other. They can't manage to do it anywhere else. They can't manage to do it in national government either. The highest taxes in the 70 years and the worst public services ever. And yet they try and come in here and teach us lessons about putting budgets together and running services. This amendment deserves to go exactly where I think it's going to end up, in the dustbin once again, because it's absolutely ridiculous that they keep coming back year on year with the same story about council tax, yet there's no track record whatsoever of them in charge anywhere being able to deliver any of what they say about low taxes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor McGowan, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's probably best for me to deal with the three members that have spoken against the amendment that the Conservative groups put forward. First on Councillor Barton, with the risk of 114 notices. I mean, this amendment would be financially viable as put forward by the council officer who's looked over it. It's not about putting us in any risk whatsoever. And the risk of notices, I think, if you look across the country, is from Labour councils that have got themselves in a little bit of a pickle rather than something on this scale. That's the first point. The thing that Councillor Lishman, Gordon Lishman was talking about, Councillor Lishman, I think it's a bit unfair to say that I personally equate efficiency savings with poor people, which is kind of the route you were going down. I certainly don't. I certainly don't buy into that premise. What I see year on year in this place, and it kind of touches on what Councillor Townsend has said, is the council every single year goes for the maximum amount. Now, you might say, well, who sets the 2.99%? Well, it could be higher. You could set it at 5%, you just won't do it because you'd have to go to a referendum. You could set 5% council tax, but you go for the 2.99% because you know that 0.1% higher and a local referendum would be called on the council tax. And nobody wants that, and you certainly wouldn't want that. Burnley Together do a fantastic job. I think that the points I put forward in the amendment, it still would mean £100,000 going to Burnley Together. I mean, that's a significant amount of money in my mind, £100,000. When it comes to council tax discount, we're talking about people having an 85% council tax discount. That works out to like £18 a month council tax for that individual to pay if they get the council tax support. I think that's very generous. And if you think that, well, that's not good enough, it has to be 95%, then we can agree to disagree on that, but that's my take on it. Because the one thing that I think is missing from this budget, which is what this amendment is trying to rectify, is the fact that it does nothing for workers. It does nothing for those who go to work every single day and who say to me, when I do speak with them on the doorstep, we've spoken about people chatting on the doorstep, they'll say, I go to work, but why is my council tax, I'm getting shafted. And I can only do what a Burnley Borough councillor can do. Councillor Townsend might have watched LCC with great joy. Good for him. I'm a Burnley Borough councillor. What LCC do, who deal with adult social care, the roads, schools, that's their business. I have control over Burnley Borough Council matters, being a Burnley Borough councillor, as every member in this room is. So I can't just look at somewhere else and say, well, they're bad, so I can have a free ticket to be bad. I don't buy into that either. But I appreciate that members tonight will not be supporting this motion. That's fine. We can agree to disagree on it. But our group put forward a motion which we believed would have helped workers as well as those people who do need support within the borough of Burnley, Padiham, Hapton. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Margaret Lishman, you have a right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I object to the premise that we do nothing for workers. I don't think that's correct. I think also the points, 2 points, clear points need to be made. This is a one-off reduction. And I said very clearly that if we do not make that 2.99%, we have to find it year after year after year. So presenting a motion that gives a one-off is irresponsible for us as a council to accept. I also said very clearly the calculation that the government makes of how it achieves the 5.4% spending, core spending power. And in that agreement, there is a very clear assumption that we as a council do that 2.99%. Yes, you're right. If we wanted to do more, we would have to have a referendum, and we would not do that to our residents. This partnership of independents, Liberal Democrats and Greens have worked hard to put this budget together, and it's a budget which works. It's three parties working together, doing our best for Burnley. It's a pity that sometimes others in this chamber can't do the same, rather than trying to score cheap political points at the last minute. And I would say that in future, when we come to the budget, my door and the door of the executive will always be open. You don't have to wait till we get to grandstanding at a budget meeting. We can have those conversations before. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now go to the recorded vote on the amendment.
Thank you very much. As per usual, I will read out the names of every individual councillor who's present at today's meeting in relation to Councillor McGowan's amendment to the executive's budget. If you could kindly indicate whether or not, and loudly for the benefit of officers, whether or not you're for or against the amendment, or if you're abstaining as well. So to start off with, Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, Councillor Lee Ashworth, Councillor Howard Baker, Councillor Gail Barton, Councillor Gordon Birtwistle, Councillor Helen Bridges, Councillor Charlie Briggs, Councillor Margaret Brindle, Councillor Joanne Broughton, Councillor Saeed Chowdhury, Councillor Scott Cunliffe, Councillor Sue Graham, Councillor Alex Hall, Councillor John Harbour, Councillor Bill Horrocks, Councillor Alan Hosker, Councillor Martin Hurt, Councillor Jacqueline Inkle, Councillor Mohammed Ishtiaq, Councillor Nusrat Kazmi, Councillor Anne Kelly, Councillor Arif Khan,
Against.
Councillor Jack Lorner, Councillor Alan Lewis, Councillor Gordon Lishman, Councillor Margaret Lishman, Councillor Shirish Lawn, Councillor Jamie McGowan, Councillor Neil Mottershead, Councillor Mark Payne, Councillor Asif Raja, Councillor Paul Reynolds, Councillor Christine Solis, Councillor Mark Townsend, Councillor Don Whittaker. Have I missed anybody off?
Right, the amendment falls, it's not carried. Thank you. We will now go back to the original motion. Any member on this one? The original motion put forward by Councillor Margaret Lishman. You have the final right of reply of the motion. Before any member before that. All right. Right, Councillor Anwar, you have reserved the right to speak. Yes, so you can speak.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, listening to the debate and hearing what members have got to say on the budget and also on the amendments. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Barton really for reminding everyone of the situation that other councils find themselves in, but also the fact, and this is down to various administrations along the way, the fact that Burnley is in a good place because of careful management of our budgets over time. And so what we have to do is we have to make sure that we carry on behaving in a responsible manner when it comes to our budgets and setting the budget. But just on the 2.99%, I know the point has been made about that, but Councillor Lishman is absolutely right. If we don't make that increase, then we lose that 2.99% year on year. And we've got to bear in mind, while setting the budget, is that currently inflation might be at 4%, but earlier on in the year, not so long ago, it was at 11%. So in terms of obviously rising costs and what that costs us, the council has to pick up costs as well. So all of these things affect us as a council. And I just want to remind everyone that although we're putting this up by 2.99%, as Burnley Council, we only receive 15% or so of that council tax that we that we would collect. The vast majority of that goes to Lancashire County Council. And just in answer to why we go for 2.99% and avoid having that referendum, LCC do the same and then have the additional 2% for adult social care. But the reason for stopping there is, one, because government requires us so we can draw down the additional funding. But secondly, the key reason with that, the key reason for it is because over the past 14 years, we have seen a reduction in the funding that comes into councils like ours. And that means that we are then reliant on raising council tax to continue to do that so that we can provide the services that are vital for our residents. But as an administration, one of the things that we wanted to do was to provide stability for the borough. And as a result of that, what we want to do is stick to the plan and be responsible with our finances. But we have listened. We've listened to our residents, but we've also listened to what members have got to say as well and what other members in this chamber have said. So the exec has worked hard on putting together this budget. And I know it's been mentioned about downtown and the support that sometimes will be for the vulnerable. But actually what we're finding with downtown is that the support that's being provided through downtown a lot of it is also for working people who are also struggling. And I think it's important that we make that point. Also, downtown is actually a unique service and has been used as an example of good practice by not just other parts of Lancashire, but across the country in terms of how it brings all these partners together, and not one of them is precious. What they want to do is actually deliver for the residents and the people of the borough. And as I said, so we have listened to the issues that are important, whether that's to do with enforcement, whether it's to do with looking at, tackling antisocial behaviour with our town centre, all of these things, and we'll put that and included that within the budget. And so, I think it's been recognised by both groups who have actually moved amendments that actually this is a good budget. And I would hope that all members will therefore support the recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Margaret Lishman, you have the final right of reply on this motion. Sorry,
I suggest, Mr. Mayor, that we move to the vote.
I've got Councillor
I did have my hand up to speak. I haven't spoken on the substantive motion as far as I'm aware, so I'm allowed to speak on the substantive motion.
Councillor Townsend, as none of the amendments were passed, this is still the original motion, and you did speak on the original motion to move an amendment.
Yes, it's not a substantive. Yeah. Right, so Councillor Lishman here.
I suggest we move to a vote, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Right. We will now, sorry, have we got one here? Yeah. We will now go to the recorded vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Same protocol as before, but this time we will be voting on the original motion put forward by the executive. Once again, please could you indicate loudly for the benefit of officers whether or not you are for the motion, against the motion, or abstaining from the motion. So I'll read them out, the names out individually. Councillor Afrasiab Anwar. Councillor Lee Ashworth. Councillor Howard Baker. Councillor Gail Barton. Councillor Gordon Birtwistle. Councillor Helen Bridges. Councillor Charlie Briggs. Councillor Margaret Brindle. Councillor Joanne Broughton. Councillor Saeed Chowdhury. Councillor Scott Cunliffe. Councillor Sue Graham. Councillor Alex Hall. Councillor John Harbour. Councillor Bill Horrocks. Councillor Alan Oscar. Can you just repeat that, Councillor Oscar? Thank you. Councillor Jacqueline Inkle. Councillor Martin Hurt. Councillor Mohammed Ishtiaq. Councillor Nusrat Kazmi. Councillor Anne Kelly. Councillor Arif Khan.
For.
Councillor Jack Lorner. Councillor Alan Lewis. Councillor Gordon Lishman. Councillor Margaret Lishman. Councillor Shirish Lawn. Councillor Jamie McGowan. Councillor Neil Mottershead. Councillor Mark Payne. Councillor Asif Raja. Councillor Paul Reynolds. Councillor Christine Solis. Councillor Mark Townsend. Councillor Don Whittaker. Thank you very much.
Right, the motion is carried. Right, agenda item, please quiet, yeah. The agenda item 5M, pay policy statement. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you move the report? Please, can I have one meeting? Yeah, okay.
Move the report, Mr Mayor.
Right. Councillor Anwar, will you second the report?
I second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Any member?
Pay policy statement.
Yeah, pay policy statement. No. All those in favor, please show. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. The item is carried. The agenda item 5N, constitutional reporting and amendment of outside bodies. Councillor Anwar, will you move the report and the Burnley Independent nominations as detailed on the list of nominations published and circulated this evening?
I move the nominations, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Saeed Chowdhury, will you please second that? Councillor Mark Townsend, will you please move the Labour Group nominations as set out?
I so move, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Sue Graham, will you please second that?
Second that happily, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Scott Conliffe, will you please move the Green Group nominations?
I move, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Martin Hurt, will you please second those?
I'll move them, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Howard Baker, will you please move the Liberal Democrat Group nominations?
I move those, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please second that?
Second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Alan Hosker, will you please move the Conservative Group nominations? Councillor Jamie McGowan, will you please second those?
I second that, Mr Mayor.
Any member? Please quiet, please. Okay. Any member on these? Right. Firstly, we will go to the vote on the recommendations at para 9, 10, and 11 to approve that the appointment to Burnley Leisure will continue until July 2026. Approve a change in the Leisure Trust appointments process and to approve the addition of Burnley Town Board to the Council's list of outside bodies. Any related appointments will be considered subsequently. All those in favor, please show. All those against? Any abstentions? Yeah. These items are carried. All right. As we have some uncontested nominations, we will take those first. 1. Changes to committee places and the addition of substitutes as set out in the supplement. For the position of Burnley Leisure and Culture Director, Councillor Martin Hurt. Vice Chair of DC, Councillor Martin Hurt. All those in favor, please show. All those against, please show. Any abstentions, please show. The item is carried. Finally, we have one contested vacancy. This is for opposition member representative on Burnley Town Board. We have received 2 nominations for 1 position. Members have 1 vote. Please ensure you keep your hands clearly raised until the count is completed. All those in favor of Councillor Sue Graham, please show. All those against, please show. Sorry?
No, all those for Councillor McGowan.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, right. All those in favor of Councillor Jamie McGowan, please show. Right. Yeah. Okay, members, Councillor McGowan had a majority of votes and has been elected as opposition member on Burnley Town Board. Congratulations. Item 5O, calendar of meetings. Councillor Anwar, will you move your report?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move the report, but I will also just to make members aware that with regards to one of those meetings, which is the annual budget meeting, we are dictated to by the county council, and a date has been set as a result of that provisionally for March next year. And I just wanted to make members aware that this is something that will be brought up with county council colleagues, and I'll be bringing it up at Lancashire Leaders on Thursday, just to say that they need to bring it back in line so that we can get our budget council and our decisions made in good time. So I'm just making members aware of that. And I'll move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please second the report?
Second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Any member? All those in favor, please show. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? These items are carried. Agenda item 5B, appointment of mayor and deputy mayor. Right, Paul Reynolds, you have to leave here.
No, he doesn't.
No, it's not, it's not, don't have to leave.
Because it's not being voted on. It's not a decision. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they should go home. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, as he declared his interest on this item, so I think he should have to go here. Anyway, Councillor Anwar, will you move the report?
I move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please second the report?
Second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Any member? Councillor McGovern.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarification. I ain't got the paper in front of me. Is this a vote on whether to approve the new mayor and deputy mayor?
No, not yet.
Okay.
No. All right. Any member? Okay. Members, the report is noted. It's just for the, it's not, we're not, maybe next meeting, we're going to discuss that. It's not, in the May here, yeah, the May here. Okay, right, right, agenda item 6, questions.
Just one second, did you I forgot.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oscar. All right, well, let him sit down here. Okay, all right, members, agenda item 6, questions. Please quiet.
Mr. Mayor, we've received a question from Councillor Mark Townsend and pursuant to Standing Order 10.2.
That's all right. Councillor Townsend, please read your question.
Question to the leader of the council in accordance with. It's okay. In accordance with Standing Order 10.2. On the 19th of October 2023, the Chief Executive wrote to the Department of Business, Enterprise, Innovation and Skills requesting confirmation as to where in the borough it will be eligible for the £20 million Towns funds to be spent. Guidance would appear to exclude Padiham and villages such as Cliviger, Hapton and Worsthorne. Can the leader please update the council as to if a response has been received from BEIS, and if so, the content of that response, or if no response has been received, have the council made contact with BEIS since the 19th of October 2023, and what, if any, date have the council been given for a response to be provided? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Anwar, can you please respond to Councillor Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in response to Councillor Townsend's query, I'm sure he's now no doubt aware that following the last full council meeting, the Chief Executive provided an update to all group leaders, which was on the 25th of January. And the salient elements of that are as follows. Just to clarify that we have only had an interim response to the query regarding whether Padiham, Cliviger and Worsthorne are included in the LTPT funding allocation from DLUC as set out below. You mentioned about the boundary of the long-term plan for towns areas. I know that my colleague Paul Evans is speaking to Kate at Burnley about this already, so they will be able to get into the granular detail on how this could work, but essentially the team think it will depend on how far or what you want to include in the boundaries. They've said it is something that they will explore with you when you start on the LPTP work with you. We are meeting DLUC officials tomorrow and shall be raising the query with them as group leaders. You also have the opportunity to do the same tomorrow with the DLUC officials. Now, Councillor Townsend was amongst the group leaders who subsequently met with the interim chair of the Towns Board, Adam Hawksby, on the 26th of Jan. And at that meeting, it was made clear that the boundaries could not be revisited to include Padiham, Cliviger and Worsthorne. On the 6th of February 2024, we received an official letter from Adam Hawksby which stated that the data in these packs is modelled on the ONS board built up area boundaries for your town. The default geography of the town is set out in the guidance published in December. You'll find a map is included for ease of reference. There is scope to make representations to the department to alter these boundaries, where an amendment remains within the spirit of the programme and includes, as part of the revised area, the town that was originally selected. For example, your town's local station may lie just outside the boundaries, provided as essential green spaces may have been excluded due to the emphasis on built-up areas, and alterations to the boundary should not bring in additional separate population centres, i.e. different towns, and must remain contiguous. It is So therefore, it's clear that as different towns, i.e. built-up areas cannot be included, as Padiham, Cliviger and Russell and Hapton are separate built-up areas, they cannot be included as part of that programme. Where boundary changes are made, e.g. to accommodate a park to the boundaries, that must remain contiguous. I'm happy to share the letter that we received with all group leaders that we received from Madam Hawkesbury, but I just want to say, and having read all of that out, I think it's important that Councillor Townsend knew all of this. He knew all this, right? Because he was in the, hang on.
You wait for your turn.
Okay. Right. So I just want to make, Councillor Townsend was in the meeting with Adam Hawkesbury. He knows this. He's already been on Facebook and posted about the fact that Padiham has been excluded. He's also done the old thumbs up and thumbs down. And he knows, and I think what we've got to get away from, we had a member in at the last full council meeting reminding us of how we need to conduct ourselves and how we need to behave. And it's off the back of Facebook posts like that I personally was actually subjected, off the back of a direct post that came from Councillor Townsend, I was personally subjected to racist abuse. And I think all of us, what we need to do is, rather than going on to social media and posting and having a go at each other, we need to be adult about the way that we conduct our business here in this chamber. Now, no matter what happens, is that we're going to have disagreements. We're going to not like some of the funding that comes in, whether it's levelling up funding, whether it's any other fund. But the thing is, it might not be enough. It might not be for the specific area that we want to focus on. But the way that we see it is that, from what I've seen, Labour doesn't have a plan either. They don't have a plan. But the fact is that there's £20 million of funding that's going to be coming into our borough. What do we do? Do we just bicker and fight that it's not enough, or this isn't right, or that's not right? Or do we use it as an opportunity to make the most of it so we can develop and provide the best opportunities for the people of Burnley? And I think it's important that we recognise that. But I'm not going to, already what will happen is there'll be a Facebook post up and saying that we don't agree with this, we don't agree with that, but we need to make sure that we conduct ourselves in a way, and let's be adult and grown up about the way that we conduct business in this chamber. And as part of the budget, one of the things that did happen was that Councillor Lishman said, if there are things that we want to work collaboratively, we want to work with all members in this chamber, we want to work with all of our residents, if there are things that you want to work on or you feel that need improvements in your wards that you represent, or any part of the borough, then our doors are open, come and speak to us. But I think we need to get away from this cheap, belittling each other, political point scoring that goes on. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Townsend, you raise your hand here. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's important to point out, yes, I was at a meeting that all the group leaders were at, where the questions were asked in terms of whether Padiham and the villages were included, and the response we got, which was a verbal response, as Councillor Anwar has just outlined, and that is what we got. Now, Councillor Anwar says that I knew everything that he just read out. That is complete rubbish, because then at the end of it, he said, I will distribute the letter in response to the October 19th letter I got to group leaders. So to say he's exaggerated beyond the remit of what he had is there for all to see, because I have never seen that correspondence. Has he ever shared it with anybody else? No, he's just admitted that. So we now have an official statement instead of a verbal one that was in a meeting, and that has not been shared with councillors. So he's kept that to himself. And I will just say, when it comes to him making statements about working collaboratively, that is a bit rich coming from Councillor Anwar, with certainly some of the antics that he got up to, certainly in the last quarter of last year, holding secret meetings and all sorts around this borough and not participating with his colleagues. So if Councillor Anwar wants to have a battle on collaboration, I'm more than happy to have that debate with him. But certainly, I'm not going to take any lessons from Councillor Anwar in that respect. He lowered the tone. It was a perfectly sensible question that was asked. There was nothing controversial in the question that was asked. The only reason why it was asked, just for members' knowledge, is because the town's board is being set up in April, and we don't have a council meeting before that, after this. Now, this would have come up in executive reports, and we'd have been able to ask Councillor Anwar that question tonight, but we're unable because this is Budget Council. And therefore, it was important that all the members, Councillor McGowan included, when he sits on that first town board in April, he knows the scope of what he's dealing with. I bet Councillor McGowan didn't know all the details either of what was in that letter, although he might do because he works in the MP's office. I don't know. But certainly members around this council didn't. So I take exception to what Councillor Anwar said to me today, because it wasn't true. I think I've made that clear that we didn't have all the details. So he needs to go and have a look in the mirror about his conduct in this council and think before he speaks in future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I think, you raised your question, you got the answer, and this item is not for debating. Yeah, for other take another question. Yeah, right. One final bit of business. Today is a most respected and well-liked person, David Bristow's birthday. I think, I think he thought he had got away with it, but I would like to wish him a very happy birthday from all of us here. Please give him a big round of applause. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your valuable contributions this evening. That concludes the business for tonight's meeting.